We are in the Likutey Moharan, Torah Chaf Bet Ot Aleph. We are in the Likutey Moharan, Torah 22, part 1. And this Torah is called Chotam Betoch Chotam, a seal within a seal. And we spoke about up until now, in the two previous classes on this Torah. What we spoke about until now was that this Torah is based on the final chapter, the fifth and final chapter of Sifra Tzniut, which is, as we said, part of the Zohar, the 5 short chapters in the Zohar that include within them all the secrets of the Torah. Our tradition is that it comes from Yaakov Avinu. And in this 5th chapter, so we already learned all the other 4 Torahs that Rebbe Nachman has on the previous 4 chapters of Sifra Tzniut. And now we're in the 5th chapter. In this chapter, Rebbe Nachman chooses a line from this chapter, a short line from this chapter that includes within tremendous amount of Torah. This is one of the longer Torahs in the Likutey Moharan, and many of the great deepest understandings that we see in the Likutey Moharan, deepest teachings are in this Torah. And this Torah is also at the center of what happens from Yom Kippur and Shmini Atzeret. So which is something that not only applies during the time of the year of Yamim Noraim, Yom Kippur and Shmini Atzeret, but also we're going to see how the concepts in this Torah apply to us throughout the year as well. Rabbi Nachman takes this piece in Sifra Tzniut that says the word Bereshit is, as we know, corresponding to the first utterance through which Hashem created the world. Hashem created the world with 10 sayings, 10 expressions, 10 utterances. And the first one is the word Bereshit. And the word Bereshit represents, the Zohar says, it represents the Sphira of Chachma, which is also called Abba, the Father. It's the way that Hashem expresses, reveals himself to us as a father. And then the Zohar says that the word after Bereshit represents the Sphira of Zeir Anpin. And these are 2 different ways that Hashem reveals himself to us. 2 different ways that Hashem shines his light and radiates his being, the light that we can experience of Hashem in these 2 different ways. One of them is called Abba, Chachma, and one of them is called Zeir Anpin, which the Zohar says is called the Son. So Abba, the Father, and Zeir Anpin, the Son. And the reason is because the same way that a son is born from a father, in the same way this world that is called Zeir Anpin, it's a world, it's one of the spiritual worlds through which Hashem draws his light to us, from the higher realm to the lower realm, from the spiritual realm to the physical realm. And in the same way that a son is born from his father, and the son is smaller than his father, right? We're not just speaking physically in the physical body, but also in consciousness, at least until the son gets to his complete state of consciousness, of adulthood. The child is half the parent. And so Bereshit is the father, is this aspect of Chachma. And what is drawn from that, the world that comes after that, is Zeir Anpin, the way that Hashem is revealed to us in this sphera, through this parts of this world that is called Zeir Anpin. And the Zohar says that the word after Bereshit, Bara, corresponds to and represents the sphera and the parts of Zeir Anpin, this world of Zeir Anpin. And therefore, the Zohar says that the word Bara is half of the word Bereshit. Bereshit, Bara. And not only that, the Zohar also says, what we see here is that the word Bara in Aramaic means a son. Bereshit, Bara. And the Zohar says, Bereshit is Ma'amar, Bara Chatzi Ma'amar. Bereshit is the utterance, the first utterance of creation. Bara is the half of an utterance, because as we said, the son is half of the father. And then the Zohar also makes another distinction between these two elements, these two aspects, these two worlds, that Bereshit is completely hidden, completely concealed, completely transcendent, whereas bara is revealed. So the Zohar says there's Bereshit Ma'amar, bara Chatzi Ma'amar. Bereshit is an utterance, bara is in half an utterance. These are corresponding to the aspects of Ab Uben, a father and his son. These are also corresponding to the two aspects of what is hidden, what is revealed, Setim V'Galya, and it's also referring to the two aspects of Eden Ila'ah, the Setim Ugeniz, and Eden Tata. Eden Ila'ah is the higher paradise, it's the higher Gan Eden. The Zohar teaches us that there are two Gan Edens, and the higher one is the transcendent one, the hidden one, the Setim Ugeniz, which is hidden and concealed. And then there's the Eden Tata. So the sun, which is the aspect of Zeir Anpin, represents the lower Gan Eden, which is called Eden Tata'a. And then Rebbe Nachman begins to explain to us in this Torah this concept of the two seals. There's the Chotam Betoch Chotam, a seal within a seal. Let me just give a little bit of Kabbalistic background before we review what Rebbe Nachman told us about the seal within the seal. So the Arizal tells us in Eitz Chaim about the aspect, the feminine aspect in the spiritual realm, which is called Nukba. And Nukba just is Aramaic for Nekeva, which means the feminine, a female. And the feminine aspect in the higher worlds, in the spiritual realm, has 10 sfirot, just like every world has 10 sfirot. And the sfirot of Yesod and Malchut, the sphere of Yesod is the sphere that represents, in the physical realm, it represents the reproductive system. It represents the ability to reproduce, the ability to create, a creative power. And so the Arizal tells us that there are two seals. The Arizal teaches us about these two seals. There is the seal of the Yesod, and then there is the seal of the Malchut. Okay, so why do we need a seal? What does a seal do? What does a Chotam do? We spoke about this previously. A Chotam is a protection. A seal is a protection so that no strangers can come close to something that is sacred, to something that is private, to something that is special, to something that that could possibly be used in the wrong way. Okay, could possibly be stolen. And so when you, for example, when you send a letter to somebody and that letter is confidential and it's very important that nobody else sees it, then you put a seal on the letter. So the seal also on wine. Okay, we know there's a halacha that wine cannot be, you have to make sure that wine is sealed so that you know that it wasn't used for idol worship, yain nesech. And so therefore you need a seal. You need a seal on meat to make sure that it wasn't mixed with non-kosher meat. So you need a seal. So Chotam is a protection that to protect the integrity and the purity of that item. And so in the same way, in the Nukba, in the feminine aspect, because the feminine aspect is always closer to the klipa. The Arizal teaches us that the klipa, the negative forces in the world, the impure forces in any world, are always drawn to the energy of judgment. And judgment energy in the sphirot is always on the side of the feminine. It's always on the left side, okay? And so the sphere of Malchut, or the sphere of a Nukba, the female aspect, the feminine energy, is an energy that is closer to the side of judgment. It's holy judgment, but still judgment. And therefore the klipot, the forces of negativity, they are right underneath that energy and waiting for an opportunity to draw some of that energy, because the energy of kindness, they're completely blocked from the energy of kindness. The energy of kindness, chesed, is a blinding light that the negative forces cannot even come close. But the energy of judgment is a dimmer light, and they are hoping to draw from, to steal from that nourishment, that energy, which is a feminine energy, and therefore they're very close to the feminine aspect, hoping to steal some of that energy, some of that nourishment, and therefore there needs to be a seal to protect the integrity and the purity of the feminine aspect. And so there's a seal in her sphera of Yesod and a seal in the sphera of the Malchut. Okay, so you have the sphera of Yesod is a seal that is called the inner seal, and it's also called Tziyon. So when you see in the Torah, when it speaks about Tziyon and Yerushalayim, right? Many times it speaks about these two. Why do you need to mention both of them? If we're speaking about the same thing, Tziyon is Jerusalem, right? So Zion is Jerusalem. So why are we speaking about both of them? Why are we mentioning both of them? Because one of them is the aspect called the inner seal, which is the seal of the sphera of Yesod, of the feminine, of the Nukba, and that's called Tziyon. And then the other one, Yerushalayim, is the outer seal. It's the seal of the sphera of Malchut. And the metaphor that the Arizal gives us to understand the meaning of this seal, he says, just like wine, I said this earlier, but the Arizal really mentions this, that wine, we know Kabbalistically, the Zohar always says that wine is the aspect of judgment energy. Wine comes from the side of Gevura, okay? And therefore, it has the ability to be used in inappropriate ways, right? A person can get drunk and do silly things, but wine can also be used in a holy way. And so whenever you have this concept where you see something that has the potential to be used in holy ways, in pure ways, and there has a potential to be used in unholy ways, then that's usually means it's an indicator that that aspect, that element, that thing that we're speaking about is from the side of judgment energy. The side of Chochmah, the side of Kedusha, of holiness, doesn't have a possibility to become unholy. Only something that could be pure or an unpure it has a possibility, is connected to that sphere of judgment, but something that is in the place of holiness, it doesn't have a possibility to fall to impurity. Okay, and so you have this energy of judgment, which is represented by the wine, and this is Zohar tells us, and therefore the wine can be used for kiddush, for example, for holy things, or it can be used inappropriately for unholy things, for impure things, and therefore we need a seal on the wine to make sure that it wasn't used just for idol worship, for example. And so that seal is protecting the judgment energy so that it's not drawn in inappropriate places. It's not stolen to be used in inappropriate ways. Okay, and so that is a metaphor to this concept of the seal, that the Nukba, the female, which is a judgment energy, a Gevura aspect, that energy needs a seal in the sphere of Yesod, an inner seal, and a seal in the sphere of Malchut. The lowest two sphirot, which is closest to, as we said, the klipot, the forces of negativity, the unholy forces, the impure forces, they are wanting to steal from that, and they're very close to the end of the feminine, the end of those 10 sphirot, which is the sphere of Yesod and Malchut, and therefore you have these two different seals. Another thing that Arizal teaches us, and this is also important to know, is that these seals that Arizal teaches us are made up of 3 names of Hashem. These are the 3 different ways that you write out the name of Aleph, K, Yud, K. Aleph, K, Yud, K of Hashem's name is many times connected to the feminine, or to the Bina aspect, the mother, the sphere that's called Ima. And when you write them out, there are 3 different ways of writing them out, Aleph, K, Yud, K. One of them, for example, is Kasa, which has the numerical value of 161. And it's written out Aleph, Lamed, Pei. So Aleph becomes Aleph, Lamed, Pei. Hey becomes Hey, Yud. Yud becomes Yud, Vav, Dalet. And the final Hey is Hey, Yud. And because it's filled up with Yuds, whenever we have an opportunity to put in a Yud there, we put in a Yud. Therefore, it has the numerical value of 161. And there are 2 other ways of writing out Aleph, K, Yud, K. And all 3 of them together have a numerical value, the gematria of Tana, with a Hey, Tina. Tav Nun He, 455. And they are the exact numerical value of Chotam. Okay, Chotam with a kollel is 455. Chotam means the seal. And so this seal is made up of these three names of Hashem. And on Yom Kippur, we have this kavanah by the Ne'ilah prayer. And this is the kavanah that Arizal gives us about the seal. Okay, the seal is made up of these three names. So after giving you this little background, this Kabbalistic background on the two seals, now Rabbi Nachman explains to us the two seals. He says one seal is called the seal of the hands, and one of them is called the seal of the feet. Okay, so you have a lower seal and you have a higher seal. And Rabbi Nachman explained to us that there is an outer seal and an inner seal, right? Chotam Betoch Chotam. And so what is the seal? And what is the seal? And what's the seal within the seal? So the seal, the first seal, is called the feet. And the feet are the tzaddikim of the generation that rebuke. They are responsible for guiding the generation, leading the generation to return to Hashem, to fix their ways, to change their ways. And they are called the feet of the generation because of two reasons. One reason is because they travel on their feet from place to place, from person to person, teaching them and guiding them in the ways of Hashem, inspiring them to return to Hashem. We're not speaking about rebuke that is the type of the rebuke that most people respond negatively to. That's not what we're speaking about. There's a very specific way of rebuking, of teaching people, leading people to how to rectify themselves, help themselves, improve themselves, that people really, really respond positively to, that people really appreciate and really enjoy, and it inspires people. And that's what we're speaking about, right? If it was a type of rebuke that turned people off, then that's not at all accomplishing the purpose here. The purpose here is that, as Rebbe Nachman said, sometimes there are difficult decrees when people are not following the Torah and mitzvot. There are difficult decrees. These are the consequences of their destructive actions. And Hashem doesn't want to hurt people. Hashem doesn't want those consequences to unfold in those people's lives. Hashem doesn't want those difficulties to happen for them. And so Hashem, so to speak, he consults these rebukers of the generation, the leaders of the generation. He consults with them and he asking them, well, how do we eliminate and dissolve these difficult decrees, this judgment energy? How do we make sure that everyone returns to Hashem, fixes themselves so that none of these consequences unfold in their life? And what they do is they say to Hashem, look, Hashem, we're going to take responsibility, and we're going to go and inspire them to return to you, to fix their ways, to improve themselves. And in this way, there's no reason for those consequences. There's no need for those consequences. And Hashem says, yes, that's what I want. That's what I want. That's great. And so because they go from person to person, they travel on their feet, teaching people, therefore they're called the feet of the generation. Therefore they're called the feet, the seal of the feet. I wouldn't say they're the feet of the generation because they're the leaders of the generation, but they're called the seal of the feet. Okay, that's how we would describe it. And then they're also called the feet because the seal of the feet, because as we said, that they are advising Hashem to allow them to go and inspire the people to return to Hashem. And because they are advisors of Hashem, the aspect in the Sfirot that is called the aspect that advises, the advisors are the Sfirot of Netzach and Hod. And the Netzach and Hod are represented by the two legs, the 2 feet of a person. And therefore these, the rebukers of the generation, the leaders of the generation, those that are and those that are responsible for inspiring everyone to return to Hashem, to fix their ways, because those people are advising Hashem, those tzaddikim are advising Hashem to allow them to go and eliminate the judgment decree, the judgment and the decrees by teaching the generation to return to Hashem. So because they're the advisors of Hashem, so to speak, they're called the feet, the Netzach and Hod. Netzach and Hod are always the advisors. Okay, what they do is they take the Chochmah, they take the wisdom, and they show us how to practically apply it. Okay, they show the people how to use the wisdom of the Torah to fix their ways, to be inspired to return to Hashem, to improve themselves. and that eliminates all the decrees, that's all the difficult decrees, and that eliminates all the judgment. And so that's why they're called the feet. The feet is also, so we said it's the Netzach and Hod, it's the advisors. And so here we are in middle of part 1 in the Torah. And Rabbi Nachman says that these feet, the seal of the feet, what they do is they go and they put the seal on the judgment energy, on the decree that comes out on the generation. In order, they put the seal. What do you mean they put the seal? They make sure that that judgment energy does not become a cruel decree. Okay, because people can either take that judgment energy and look at themselves, see where they are coming short, see what they can improve, what could be better, and they find positive ways to be inspired and influenced to return to Hashem, to fix their ways, to help themselves, to reconnect, to appreciate the love and the joy and the pleasure and the bliss in the Torah and the mitzvot, right? And this is also using judgment energy, right? Because they're looking at themselves specifically, they're looking at the things that could be better, and they're taking the steps necessary in order to make them better. So they're using the judgment energy in a positive way. But we don't want that judgment energy to become cruel judgment or cruel decree. If, God forbid, the generation didn't really care for what the tzaddikim are telling them and teaching them and trying to inspire them and influence them to help themselves, to improve themselves. If people are not going to follow that, if people are not going to listen to that, or they're going to take it lightly, then what happens is that seal of the feet is broken. And then that judgment energy falls to the place of the klipa, to the place of the negative forces, the unholy and impure forces. And they take that judgment energy and they turn it into a difficult decree and terrible consequences on the generation, catastrophes that happen in the world. And so that's what Rebbe Nachman taught us here. Therefore, we need the seal to protect that judgment energy so that it doesn't become a cruel judgment, so that it's used in a positive, productive, constructive way. Okay, and then Rabbi Nachman taught us that this is the aspect of Chotam Torah Belimudai. Chotam Torah Belimudai, which means seal the Torah among my disciples. Seal the Torah among my disciples. What does that mean? So Rebbe Nachman says, Hainu belimudei Hashem. The meaning, seal the Torah with my disciples who are the Netzach and Hod. These are the feet, the seal of the feet. These are the leaders of the generation that are responsible for guiding everyone to return to Hashem and fix themselves. So they seal the Torah. So that the klipot, the negative, unholy, and impure forces are not able to steal their nourishment from it. And they, when the Torah judgment is revealed to them, they go and they inspire the generation to return to Hashem, in order that they return to Hashem, they rectify themselves, help themselves, improve their ways, so as to dissolve and sweeten that judgment energy. And even when they reprove the people, when they rebuke the people, they are extremely careful to seal and conceal the judgment, so that the outside forces do not draw their nourishment from it. And this aspect, what they do, is described in the pasuk in Eov that says, with their reproof, it is sealed up. With their musar, it is sealed up. And this is also why they are called the seal. Okay? What they're doing is they're hiding their rebuke. What does it mean they're hiding and concealing their rebuke? So we're going to see more about that here in this next piece. Ve'elu halimudei Hashem marbim shalom ba'olam. Rabbi Nachman is going to tell us that they hide the rebuke, because what that means is when they're speaking to Hashem, they make it as if the Jews didn't do anything wrong. Okay, they only judge them favorably, and whatever sin that may have been, they make it seem like it was nothing. It was really small, or it wasn't their fault, or whatnot. But when they're speaking to Am Yisrael, when they are rebuking the nation, they make sure that everybody recognizes the severity of their inappropriate ways of living. Okay, that they recognize the severity of it, so that they take the words of the Torah seriously, and they recognize the significance and the importance and the urgency in actually fixing their ways right now. And so therefore what they're doing is they're concealing, hiding their rebuke, so as not to awaken more judgment on Am Yisrael when they're speaking to Hashem. And then when they rebuke the nation, they make it really severe and make it really big, so that everybody takes it seriously and returns to Hashem right away and fixes themselves. And like this, they mitigate the judgment energy. They dissolve the judgment and they tear up the evil decrees. ואלו הלימודי השם מרבים שלום בעולם, כמו שכתוב בכל בנייך מודי השם ורב שלום בנייך. And these teachers of Hashem, limudei Hashem means those that teach Hashem, okay, meaning they're advising Hashem. And these are the Netzach and Hod, we said, and the feet. These are those that rebuke the generation, that are responsible for rebuking and leading the generation. So these teachers of Hashem, limudei Hashem, they're also those that teach the knowledge of Hashem to the generation. That's also why they're called limudei Hashem. They increase peace in the world, as the pasuk says. The pasuk in Yeshayahu says, and all your children shall be the teachers of Hashem, and great shall be the peace of your children. So they increase peace in the world. Why and how do they increase peace in the world? Because they go to mediate and make peace between the Jewish people and their Father in heaven. And before the Holy One, before Hashem, they minimize the matter, they minimize whatever inappropriate ways the generation is taking, the inappropriate things that they're doing. They minimize it in front of Hashem and speaking to Hashem. They minimize the matter and they offer a positive outlook on the situation. They offer and endorse the generation. Okay, they stand up for them. They defend them. And we see it, ולפני ישראל, ולפניו יתברך מתאינים הדבר ממליצים טוב באדם, לפני ישראל מקדינים החטא מאוד, כמו שמצינו אצל משה שאמר להשם יתברך, למה יפרה אפך בעמך, וישראל אמר, אתם חטאתם חטאה גדולה. And when they are speaking to the generation, they magnify the transgression greatly. They make it seem greater and more severe. And this is what we find by Moshe when the Bnei Israel, when they sinned with the golden calf, with the Egel HaZahav, right? So it says, we see over there by Moshe, he said to Hashem, why unleash your wrath against your people? Meaning, there's no reason to unleash your wrath against your people. Meaning, the sin that they did is not that big. He's minimizing the sin when he's speaking to Hashem. Whereas when he spoke to Am Yisrael, when he spoke to the people, and we rebuked them for the sin of idolatry, he says to them, Atem chatatem chata'a gedola. You have committed a terrible transgression. So that's what the tzaddikim do. That's what these tzaddikim are doing. וכשהרע של הדור גובר על החותם הנ"ל ומקלקל אותו חס ושלום, אזי נתקלקל שלום העולם ונעשה גירושין ומחלוקת בעולם הפך השלום. And when the evil of the generation, the negativity of the generation, overpowers the seal and destroys it, that means that they don't take the rebuke of the Torah of the Torah seriously. They make light of it, and therefore they're allowing the negativity to overpower the positive, the good, the light, the Torah, and that destroys the seal. It breaks the seal. And then what happens because of that is the peace in the world is then destroyed, because the peace in the world is when there's peace between Israel and Hashem. And the peace between Israel and Hashem is when the people make sure that they are, aligning themselves with Hashem and Hashem's Torah and for the reason why they were created in this world. And therefore, there is no cruel judgment, and the judgment energy is protected, so it doesn't turn into consequences or difficult decrees. And then there's only love and pleasantness and blessings in the world, and happiness and peace. But when that seal is destroyed, so then the peace in the world is destroyed. And what else happens? Says Rebbe Nachman, and then there is expulsion and dispute, meaning the Jews are expelled from the countries that they live in, like we saw many times throughout history. And there is dispute in the world. There are arguments. There is a separation in the world. Many people on this side, many people on that side. People are vehemently arguing with each other for having different perspectives and for being different. Which is all of this is the opposite of peace. And this is the aspect that is represented in the pasuk in Eov that says, and from the world he will be banished. Okay, so says Rabbi Nachman that this world banished, yeniduhu, is the same word as, it comes from the same word in Hebrew as niddah, okay, which is a woman in her menstrual, when she has her period, so she's called a niddah. And the reason is because she separates from her husband for that time period until she purifies herself in the mikvah. And so the word niddah means also literally, it also means to be banished or to be sent away. Okay. Sometimes when the Torah uses, when Torah is speaking about throwing the holy water, right? The water, the purifying water of the para aduma, of the red cow. Also, it uses this word of menida, okay, because it's water that is being thrown, okay, that is being thrown on the person. And so the word nida means to be thrown out. Okay, it can mean to be expelled, to be sent out, to be sent away, to be banished, or it could mean just to throw, like the water on the person to purify him. And so here it's speaking about being banished, being expelled, right? And from the world he will be banished. And this is also says, so what Rabbi Nachman says, because from the Chotam, the seal, when it's broken, it is transformed into the judgment energy is then stolen by the forces of evil, and it's transformed into negativity, and it's transformed into these evil decrees of expulsion and hatred against us throughout the world. And this is also from the Arizal. And so the Arizal says this. The Arizal says that the word chotam is the same numerical value, the seal, same numerical value as nidat, which means to be expelled. Okay. And what that means is that when the seal is broken, if the seal is broken, God forbid, then that energy is then transformed into this cruel judgment, into expulsion, into nidat, into being banished. Okay, so it's the same numerical value. And this we see in the Arizal in Eitz Chaim. It's in the same place in Eitz Chaim. Arizal says that when the judgment energy, which is by the feminine aspect, if that judgment energy is drawn, stolen from the side of holiness, and stolen by the forces of negativity, impurity, and unholiness, the klipot, what they do is they take it and they turn that judgment energy into something that is unholy, and they turn it into the menstrual blood, the period blood. And that's when the judgment turns into a completely cruel judgment, or an impure judgment. And that's why the chotam can turn into niddah, which is the same numerical value. Okay, and so that's the significance of the chotam and niddah on the other side. And these leaders of the generation that are going out and rebuking, going with their feet, but traveling and advising people on how to fix their ways, and inspiring people to do so and to apply the lessons of the Torah to help themselves, to improve themselves, to return to Hashem, to feel that inspiration, to enjoy the pleasure of being connected to Hashem and fulfilling Torah and mitzvot. When they do that, they are creating this seal that protects that judgment energy, it protects the feminine aspect, the Nukba in the spiritual realm, so that that energy is not stolen by the klipot. And so that they're protecting the generation from any evil decrees, and they're causing more and more peace and joy and blessings throughout the world. And so we want to make sure that this seal is not broken, because if it's broken, God forbid, then it's transformed from chotam to niddah, which causes the opposite of that peace and harmony and happiness and blessings. It causes terrible tragedies, catastrophes. It causes expulsion and anger and frustration and arguments throughout the world, and hatred against us throughout the world. And so this brings us to the second part in this Torah, to Od Bet, which we're going to learn about the next Chotam. So all this was about the first seal. Now in the next part of the Torah, we're going to learn about the second seal and what does that represent. And the second seal we're going to see is called the hands. So you have the feet was the first seal, and then you have the hands, and we're going to learn about that B'ezrat Hashem in the next class, in the next year.